Hello, welcome to the Sound of Midnight. I am Tyrell Moyd, your host here on this 31st day of May in 2017. Thank you for joining me tonight here on the Sound of Midnight. I am blessed by each of you who encourage me and support me every week. Just this week I was in a training session, and someone who was in the class came up to me and said how much she appreciates me doing this each week. So I am excited. I'm glad that this ministry is blessing someone, and if you are being blessed by it, I encourage you to share it, to like it, send me inbox me, send me messages. I do appreciate it, and it does encourage me to keep going on. So today I want to talk a little tonight, a little bit about my day. Today, often we rule out days, good days, bad days, and these polar opposites. So tonight, today, I was challenged by something that went on at work, because someone, they were just doing what they do. They were expressing themselves, and it took me out of my own character. And I had to realize that the person whom I was interacting with, they did something that surprised me, because it was something that I had not been exposed to in their character yet. So when it happened, when it transpired, it shook me. It took me sort of out of my own place. The person was intentionally expressing negativity and to get back at me, and I felt like I wanted to retaliate. Something in me wanted to respond to who the person was. The person was expressing who they was, and it shifted who I felt like I was in that moment. And I had to take the time to realize that although the actions were aimed my way, but there was something deeper going on. Hurt people often hurt other people. So I was just the target at this particular time. So it took me a minute to sort of wrap my head around what was happening. And I did not have it, but I almost had one of those sort of snap moments. But for a moment, I sort of envisioned myself stepping out of my character. But it made me realize that I can't allow who somebody else is shift who I am. I could not let who he was shift who I am, who I am in my own character. I had to stop and look at that. So I thought about, who am I really? I had the thought of doing evil. Who is this person who's having these thoughts? And I heard my friend Sean in my spirit say, what we need to put something in between the thought and the action. So when the thought enters your mind, put something in between that that shifts that focus. So I took a ride, and on this ride I decided that I was going to text my bishop. And when I text him, the first words that he texts back to me was, "Run to the silence." I was in the midst of upset. I was in the midst of anger, and I wanted to express it. And I had told him that I wanted to express it, and he said to me, "Run to the silence." Now, the silence is a meditation practice that we do at our church. We practice corporately on Sundays for sitting 7 minutes in the silence, and daily on our own. So when he sent me that text, my immediate thought was, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be quiet in this moment. I want to express myself. I want to say something. I want to react to what's happening around me. But I took his advice, and I attempted to sit in the silence. I sat in my car, and as I sat there, my mind began to race. I couldn't focus. Because it's become a practice for me, it's normally pretty easy when in the morning when I get up. I set my meditation app off, and it does the 3 little dings, and I sit there and I'm able to center myself. But in the midst of the upset, it was hard for me to concentrate. It was hard for me to focus. So I found my mind racing. So I would try to sit in the silence, and then I would move on to something else. But I found that throughout the day, although I was able to make it through the day, I found that I wasn't as focused as I needed to be. I would start working on one thing, and right in the middle, another thought would pop in my head, and I would start working on something else. I was finding myself moving back and forth. But it wasn't until I had gotten home and I was walking the dogs, and now it's the end of the day, and I'm talking to my bishop again about the day. And as I'm walking back in the house, I noticed that I'm out of breath. I've been walking the dogs. We were walking at a pretty fast pace. And I realized as the words came out of my mouth that I am out of breath. I realized that during the silence, that's what I was missing. When we first started the meditation practice of the silence, one of the things that came into focus for me was the breath. It's important that during meditation, during our silent times, that we focus on our breath, focus on our breathing. And I thought yesterday, I was in a training session, and I thought back about one of the statistics that the facilitator had given us. She said, in one of the statistics that she found, that taking 4 deep breaths can decrease one's blood pressure by 10 points. So just taking the time to breathe deeply. And she said 4 deep breaths actually can decrease our blood pressure by 10 points. So I came home and I began to look up breathing techniques and different things on the internet. And one of the articles that I came across said there were 18 benefits of deep breathing and how to breathe deeply. And as it began to go through some of the benefits were breathing relaxes us. Breathing relieves tension in our body. Breathing relaxes the mind. Breathing relieves pain in the body. Breathing increases muscle. Breathing improves posture. Breathing boosts energy levels, and it also improves stamina. So there was all of these benefits that if we would just take the time to stop and breathe, that we would gain just from breathing. But because I'm a church boy, I had to go to the Bible and get some biblical context on breathing. And one of my favorite scriptures it comes from the first day of creation, from Genesis 1, when it says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light. And there was light, and God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the day, and God divided the light from the darkness, and the light he called day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day." And every time I think about that first day of creation, I get excited. I love the first day of creation because in that first day we get light and we get breath. For God said, let there be light. So in that first day of creation we get light, but we also get breath. We also get spirit. For it says the Spirit Spirit of the Lord moved upon the face of the waters. And we know that in biblical texts, spirit and breath are used interchangeably. So here where it's talking about the Spirit of God moving, it's talking about the breath of God moving upon the face of the water. But the problem that I have is that I get stuck in the first day. I get stuck in that first day of the Spirit moving around me. I get stuck in that first day of good things happening around me. But it's not until the sixth day of creation where the Spirit or the breath moves in me. That's who I really am. I am the breath of God. Genesis, the first chapter, verse 25. So tonight I'm not going to deal with the first day, but I'm going to talk about the sixth day. Verse 25 of Genesis. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. Everything that God created, he created after its own kind. So there weren't any giraffes giving birth to elephants, and there weren't any dogs giving birth to butterflies, and there weren't any birds giving birth to snakes. But everything that was created was created and produced after its own kind. And God saw that it was good. I like here in verse 25 where it says God saw what he created and he said it was good. There's often times when we deal with what we call this false humility. It's all right to say that we're good at something. If we're good at it, we're just good at it. I enjoy painting, and when I get done painting a room, I don't look back at it and say, oh, well, it's okay. I say that it's good, and I can say that it's good because if it's not good, then I don't stop. I'm not finished if it isn't good yet. So God took inventory of what he had done, of what he had created, and he evaluated himself and said it is good. That he had made every living creature after its own kind, and he said it's good. I like what I did there. I like the pattern that I used. I like the way that I created this set, so I'm going to use that to create the next. And God said, verse 26, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And then jumping down to verse 27, so God created man in his own image. If the animals were made after the likeness of their own kind, God created man in his own image. So I am the creation of God, and because I'm created in the image of God, what God has, I also have. And in Genesis, the second chapter, in verse 7, it tells us how this creation of man took place. And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. The art of becoming is breathing. What God did here is he breathed into man the breath of life. It is when we take our time to sit and breathe. So today when I was hearing my bishop say, run to the silence, I was thinking about what I was hearing, and I wasn't focused on the breathing, because if I focus on the breath, as I began to breathe in God, I would begin to breathe out love. As I began to breathe in God, I began to breathe out strength. As I began to breathe in God, I began to breathe out faith and breathe out joy and breathe out life. I am the breath of God. What God has placed in me will surely come out. Whitney has gotten some people twisted, for we're sitting around and we're waiting to exhale. But what God is saying that we need to do is inhale. We need to breathe in the breath of God so we can breathe out the spirit of love, so we can breathe out a spirit of peace. We can't breathe out what is not already in us. So I'm not saying in the midst of things that make you upset, in the midst of things that come up for you to be a doormat. I'm not saying for you to sit back and be a pushover. I'm not saying for you not to stand up for yourself. But before you make your next move, take time to breathe. Take time to breathe in, knowing that as I'm breathing in the very life of God. I am the breath of God. I am the spirit of God. I am God in the earth. So as I breathe out, the words that I say, the things that I speak have to be spoken in love. No matter what I'm going through, no matter what I'm faced with, I have to still walk in the spirit of love. I have to still walk in the spirit of kindness. I have to still walk in the spirit of peace. I had to get my breath back. I had to realize that I was connected to the one. That no matter what's going on around me, no matter what's happening, no matter the trouble that's happening out on the sea, I have the breath of God inside of me. And with that, I can breathe out peace. I can breathe out strength. I can breathe out love. Thank you for joining me tonight. God, we just thank you and bless you for those who join us each week here on the Sound of Midnight. God, we thank you for your breath. We thank you for your spirit. We thank you for the time that you have given us, dear God, that we might focus on you. So, dear God, in our daily walk, we focus on the breath of life, knowing that, God, that because we are still breathing, there's still work for us to do. There's still assignments that are ahead of us. And in that, dear God, we have to recognize that we are the Christ. We are Christ in the earth. So God, tonight, continue to breathe in us, dear God, the breath of life, that we might breathe out a spirit of peace, a spirit of hope, a spirit of love, that everywhere that we walk, we might be able to walk in peace. We might be able to speak peace. We might be able to live a life of peace, because of the breath that you have placed inside of us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you again for joining me here on the Sound of Midnight. I just invite you this week, when you come up to the things that might shake you, the things that might have you question some things, go to the silence, and in the silence, focus on your breath. Focus on your breathing, knowing that as I'm taking this air in, as I'm breathing in God, He's strengthening me. He's fortifying me. He's doing something inside of me. He's shifting some things on the inside of me, because I can't change what happens around me. I can't change what happens on the outside, but I have to put something, as Sean would say, I have to put something in between the thought and my action. So if you have a thought of doing wrong, you have a thought of doing bad, you have a thought of doing evil, take time in between there to stop and breathe and know that you must reflect and you must be the breath of Christ in the earth today. God bless you. I'll see you here next week on the Sound of Midnight. Thank you for joining me. Good night.